Okay, well, welcome to the masterclass for PRINCE2. Whoops. This is a masterclass. This is going to be sort of like a very quick revision of PRINCE2 Foundation, and we are going to look at some of the key aspects of PRINCE2 at the beginning, followed by going through the different themes as a revision, and I will focus on the major factors that get chased up in the exam, or which people are usually a bit confused about. We'll talk about processes towards the end, and then I'll be dealing with the exam itself and taking you through some of the different formats for the questions, and also look at the some questions themselves. So get you familiar with that and prepare you for your forthcoming exam. So without further ado, let's launch into the first aspect of the project and project management. Is we need to know what it is that we are managing. Okay, there are 6 aspects that we need to manage. The first 2 are fairly easy to understand. The cost of the project. Right, I'm sharing screen, but I'm not seeing things change in the, okay, now it has. Okay, I think there was a delay there. Right, cost and time, yeah, pretty straightforward. You're meant to deliver this within a certain time period, and it's meant to cost X amount of money. So that's fairly well understood. The next thing, which is where some confusion rises, is what is quality? Quality simply means functionality. If you replace the word quality when you're talking about it in PRINCE2 with the word functionality, it will make everything a lot easier to understand. Okay, so quality, and think of it as it does what it says on the tin. Is it fit for purpose? Yeah, we need something that is fit for purpose. The next 2 aspects we want to manage are scope. And by scope, what we mean is we define what the project is meant to deliver and what the product features are. And then we need to manage it so that we don't get added features onto the project's product as we go along. If we do this, it is obviously going to have an impact on cost and time as we add more things. It could even affect quality because it has so many features that it actually doesn't work as well as we wanted it to be. And, you know, it could introduce more risk. Now, risk, what is risk? This is another word that means something special within PRINCE2. Most of us think of risk as something bad. Yeah, we're taking a risk, it's something bad. It could have a negative consequence. But as far as PRINCE2 is concerned, risk is only uncertainty. Okay, it only means uncertainty. It could be a good risk, which gives us more benefits or makes a project run cheaper or faster. Okay, in that case, it's called an opportunity. If it's something that's going to affect the project negatively, like reduce the benefits or increase costs, then it's a threat. Okay, so risk is uncertainty. If it's good, it's an opportunity. If it's threat, it means that it's a bad risk. Okay, so we've covered 5 so far. Now the last one I'm leaving till the last minute is really the most important one in as far as PRINCE2 is concerned, and those are benefits. If there are no benefits to be gained by an organization in delivering a project, then we shouldn't be doing the project. Yeah, we have to decide when we do the business case that we want to deliver this project product in order to give us a benefit. And we've decided, considering the business case, that given the amount of expense, the investment in man hours, people working on this project, the risks that we're taking, and the time we're spending on this project, in order to do all that investment, we obviously expect some kind of benefit. If at some point we see that the benefits that we expected are not going to materialize or going to be much less, then actually we should consider stopping the project. If there is no benefit, we should not be doing the project. Okay, benefits usually means profits. Okay, but sometimes you just need to do certain projects, like for example with data protection. You need to do it just to maintain compliance. Otherwise, you'll get perhaps your license suspended, or you might find that you're not able to operate, and you could be subject to some kind of financial penalty. Okay, so by being compliant means you get the benefit that you can operate. Okay, so sometimes we always need to bear that in mind. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, definitions. What is a project? That is a very important definition. Okay, it says there, a temporary organization that is created for the purpose of delivering one or more business products according to an agreed business case. Okay, there are two, maybe three important aspects in this definition. The first one is that it's a temporary organization. We bring together a team from different areas of the organization. We bring together the team, and we are looking at then dispersing them to do other tasks, etc., once the project has finished. Okay, so we just organize them for this particular project. Once it's delivered, they then go to their normal day-to-day tasks. Okay, it is subject to an agreed business case, i.e., somebody must authorize a business case, and in the business case we set out why we are doing it and what are the benefits. If there isn't a business case that has examined and balanced out the investment against the benefits that the business case is projecting, then we shouldn't be starting a project. Okay, so there has to be an agreed authorized business case, and it's a temporary organization. That's the definition of a project. So keep those things in mind, because you do get questions on that in foundation. Project management is the planning, delegating, monitoring, and controlling of all aspects of the project, including the motivation of those involved to achieve the project objectives, keeping those 6 performance criteria as our targets. Okay, we mentioned them in the previous slide: time, cost, quality, scope, benefits, and risks. Okay, but there are 4 steps to project management. You plan, you then delegate the work out, you monitor and see how things are going, and if things start to go pear-shaped, then you take controlling action. Moving on, we're looking now at the project characteristics. I'm just waiting for the slide to come up, but I'll talk you through it. Project characteristics, there are 5 of them. Okay, the first one is projects implement change. Projects are temporary. Like I mentioned before, you get a group of people, you deliver the project product, and you move onto other tasks once a project is finished. Projects obviously implement change. I mentioned that before, and we're going to do something different with the product that we get at the end of the project. We're going to do something with it, do something differently. So some element of change crops in. Projects are cross-functional, i.e., you get people working from different departments on a project. Okay, so you might have someone who needs to do the contract. Okay, so someone from the legal. You might get people from a technical area or several technical areas, yeah, and you pull them all together. Somebody needs to write the manuals. Okay, so you then get somebody from another team, yeah, to do this. So you get people from different areas of the business or outsourced Yeah, so different skills are used in the project. Project is unique, okay? It will always be unique. You have specific people involved, you have specific costings, and you have specific products to create. If you're repeating this, then it's business as usual, okay? So a project is unique. And lastly, projects are more risky. Well, they're simply risky in the sense that it introduces change. By introducing change, there is a bit of uncertainty. Okay, you don't know how well it's going to occur, how well it's going to go. It might even be better than we thought. And this is why we consider projects to be more risky than business as usual. Okay, we're now going to move on to the 7 principles of PRINCE2 in project management. We have, as you know, 7 principles, 7 themes, and 7 processes. Okay, so the 7 principles should be coming up on your screens. Okay, I'm just waiting for them to prop up. But the first principle is something we've already mentioned before, and that is business justification. There must be a reason, there must be benefits for us doing this particular project, okay? And that is your business case. The business case translates to business justification. Now, one important element here is it says continued. So the business case must be maintained, and those benefits must be always there, that you're expecting to get them throughout the project. Things can change as you're going through a project, and if the benefits disappear, then you should be thinking of cancelling the project. Learning from experience, this is the first thing a project manager does, okay? When he's doing the initiation of a project, he tries to capture lessons that could be applicable to this particular project. We need to know what are the things that went well so we can repeat them, and the things that didn't go so well in similar projects so we can avoid them. Defined roles and responsibilities. We must have an organizational structure in the project management team. Everybody needs to know what they are responsible for, what their authority is. Okay, without it, it becomes chaos. And this actually is one of the most common areas where projects fail. When people are not doing what they're meant to be doing, or somebody who's not meant to be doing something goes ahead and does it and authorizes a certain amount of work or whatever, if he hasn't got the actual delegated authority. So this is very important. Defined organizational structure. We manage projects in stages. Okay, this is very important. We don't just go ahead and create a project in one single block and deliver it. We need, as a minimum, okay, 2 stages. One stage to understand the work that needs to be done, and then one more stage to deliver that work and create the project product. So as a minimum, 2 project stages. Okay, and that is important because part of tailoring, sometimes they ask you what are the minimum requirements. So if it asks you what are the minimum number of stages, it's 2. Okay, at every stage we involve the project board in making sure that the business case remains justified, yeah, and that they can continue to authorize the continuation of the project. Okay, so it's very important that we do this. We also learn from the stages that we've already run, and we incorporate those lessons into the next stage plan. So you can see why it's important to break it up in stages. The next principle I want to raise up is managing by exception. And what does management by exception entail? Management by exception means that the people, your subordinates, i.e. the project manager is subordinate to the project board. The project manager gets told you are to deliver the products within the certain criteria. You've got so much money for this stage, you've got so much time for this stage, you can carry so much risk, and they'll give you a tolerance. Okay, so let's say you've got 4 weeks to deliver this stage, plus or minus 1 week. So it's got 25% tolerance in there. As long as a project manager is within those tolerances, he can just carry on and do his work. He'll be sending regular reports up to the project board, but he does not need to meet with them. Okay, we only meet in a PRINCE2 project when we have to take a decision. Okay, and when we are forecast or have exceeded our tolerances, that is a point at which we need to take a decision, and then we meet with a project board. So it's only under the exceptional circumstances where you are going outside of your tolerances that you bring the next level of management in. Okay, otherwise you just send them a report. If the stage is 6 weeks or 2 months long, then all you do is send them a weekly report. You don't have to have a weekly or fortnightly meeting. Okay, because meetings just take up time and effort, and that gets in the way of running the project. We've got reports to do that. Okay, so we only involve management by exception. Our focus is on products. We don't go and say, right, we're going to get the PRINCE2 manual, which I always keep handy over here. Okay, I'm not going to get the whole PRINCE2 manual and apply every single aspect of it if it's a simple project. So I need to focus on what the product is. If it's simple, yeah, it can be done very easily, then I might not need to use all the reports and all the documents in PRINCE2, and I can simplify it. Okay, so focus is on the products, and we do our planning based on the products. We don't say, right, we're going to do 5 stages, and now we go off and look at the product. Let's look at the product first. Okay, so focus on the products and then develop your plans accordingly. The last principle, okay, is tailoring to suit the project environment. Is it a small project? Do you have a large number of people that you can involve in the project, or are you limited? Okay, is it complicated? Yeah, all these factors will determine how you adapt PRINCE2 for this particular project. So you need to look at the project environment and all the variables in there, and there's a good guide in the appendices of the manual. You look at it all and then tailor how much PRINCE2 you're going to use. Okay, so we're now in a position where we're about to start looking at the individual themes. Okay, but before we do so, can you post any questions in chat for me? Okay, and we can then look at, I'll then endeavor to answer them. Okay, just type your question if you've got one, and we'll take it from there. Okay, haven't seen any questions or anybody typing in at the moment. That doesn't mean that you can't ask your question. If you have a question now or at any stage, just type it into the message in the chat, and I will attempt to answer it at another point inside the class. Okay, moving on, we're going to tackle our first theme, which is organization, and obviously this tackles the how shall I say, the principle that every project should have agreed roles and responsibilities. Yeah, you will be getting a copy of the recording. Okay, organization is divided in project management in 4 areas. Now, the first area, the slide will be appearing now. The first area is existing outside of the project, and that is corporate or program management or your customer. They obviously are the ones who are saying, we need this project. So obviously they are involved in project management, but they exist outside of the project management team. You can see that now in blue at the top. Okay, you then have 3 layers below that. Okay, you have the directing level, which is where the project board sits. The management level, which is where the project manager sits. And the bottom level is where the team managers sit. And that is known as a delivering level. Okay, these 3 levels are inside the project management team. So when you get a question either in foundation or practitioner, be very careful. Okay, are they referring to project management or the project management team? Because the answer can be different. How many levels are there in project management? 4. Inside the project management team, 3. Okay, next slide coming up is PRINCE2 enjoys a customer supplier environment. And by that, what we mean is that we have someone who defines what the project product is, who is going to use the project's product. And we then have suppliers who create items that go with the project product. So for example, if we have our project is to deliver the next Samsung smartphone, you will have some team managers as suppliers, and some of them will be providing the software, some of them will be providing the apps, some of them will be providing the camera, some of them will be providing the touchscreen, the charger. Okay, they're all different suppliers, most of them within Samsung, but there might be some external suppliers. So you can have combinations. You can have in-house suppliers, i.e. they belong to Samsung, and you can have some of them are outside as a third party. You probably, for such a complex project, you probably have multiple suppliers, okay? And you could also have multiple customers. You might create a battery, yeah, but your battery is used not only by Ford for their cars, but also by Fiat. Okay, so you could be developing something, but it's being used by different customers. And you can have all sorts of combinations. But remember, someone who creates something for the project, even if it's a document, is a supplier. Okay, the guy who does the contract, who creates a legal agreement, who creates the manual, the instructions, okay, that is also a supplier. So if you're producing something for the project, you're a supplier. Now, we need to look at the various interests in a project. Slide's going to come up in a couple of seconds. Okay, and in the project, we have 3 primary stakeholders. The first 2 that we talk about are people we've already mentioned, the customer or the user. Yeah, the customer and the user, the term is interchangeable, and the supplier is obviously someone who creates a product, a component for the project itself. And the user, when the project product is finished, then uses the project product to create a benefit for the organization. Okay. Now, the third primary stakeholder is the business. Okay, and this is represented on the project board by the executive. Someone needs to be balancing what at times can be conflicting demands between the user and the supplier. to make sure that what is being delivered is value for money. Okay, you can get the user who wants everything, yeah, and he wants every possible option on it, and it might not be necessary. It might be too costly and doesn't deliver a direct benefit to the business. So we need to look at that particular aspect, and somebody needs to make decisions on what goes into the project or not. And that will be the business representative, which is the executive. He's looking after the overall benefit to the organization. Here, in the next slide, we'll be looking at the whole organization of the project management team in a bit more level. We mentioned previously that the project management team has 3 levels. We have the directing level, which is where the project board sits. We have the managing level, which is where the project manager sits. And then at the bottom, we have the delivery level, which is where the team managers sit. Yeah, and they're the actual guys who actually create the components of the project. Now, the project board, which you can see above in blue, yeah, represents the 3 primary stakeholders. We have the executive. There is only one executive. You cannot have more than one executive, just like you only have one project manager. Okay, there's only one of them. And the executive is the person who makes the decisions. He'll consult the senior user and the senior supplier, but at the end of the day, it's his or her decision as to what happens. Okay, they are responsible for the project. You can see that you have a senior user or users and a senior supplier or suppliers. What you don't want to have is many people. Yeah, 5 is an ideal number. 1 executive and 2 users, 2 suppliers. That's the best option. If you have too many people, then it gets too complicated and you cannot get things done. Okay, so that's a recommendation from experience. Okay, now the project board is responsible for making sure that we have project assurance. Okay, let me see. Okay, we have project assurance, which I'm circling at the moment in red. I think there's a little bit of delay in the whole conference. Okay, so project assurance can then be divided into 3 specialist areas. So you can have one person do all 3 areas, or 3 people, or 20 people, depends how big your project is. You can see that highlighted now. Okay, so that is project assurance, and they make sure they review most of the work done by the project manager. Okay, they review it and they make sure that things are happening in the project in accordance with the rules set out and agreed by the project board, and make sure that the right people are attending it. They're sort of like checking up on everything. They're also a second set of eyes for the project manager, checking everything. So very useful function. They are not quality assurance. Quality assurance belongs to the corporation. Okay, they're always there. Whether or not we have a project, they're always there. Okay, and they will make sure that we do have project assurance in place and that we do check how things are being done. Change authority. Okay, I'll circle that in red now. That's the people who are looking at any requests for change or any issues. They will look at it and decide what is going to happen. Will it be accepted or not? Okay, so they will authorize. That change authority could be held by the executive in the project board. Yeah? Every change must go to the executive. That can happen. Yeah. If the change exceeds the tolerance, then it automatically goes to the project board. Okay, but the project board might delegate some change authorities of smaller amounts to the change authority. The project manager could be the change authority. The people in project assurance, they could act as change authority as well. So if you haven't got a lot of people, then you can double hat them. The project manager cannot do assurance, yeah, because otherwise, you know, how is he going to check up on himself? If he's made a mistake, he's not going to pick it up by double checking it. You need a second pair of eyes. At the bottom, yeah, within the managing level, we have project support. Okay, I'll try and circle that down. Okay, and project support runs the administration of the project. Okay, they help the project manager keeping track of all the plans, etc., and how things are going, making sure that configuration management, which is another fancy word for version control, okay, they are the ones who keep track of that for the project manager and help him out. If there's no one to do it, then the project manager is responsible for doing it. Okay, and last but not least, we have the team managers. Okay, and they're the people who are running the teams that create the component products that, when put together, create the project product. Okay, so that's a detail of the project management team. I'll run through some slides. Just go here. Okay, there will be coming up to see the project board coming up. Okay, like I said, the executive is responsible and ensures that it delivers value for money to the organization. Senior user represents the people who are going to be using the project's product. They need to make sure that what is being given to them is fit for purpose and meets their particular needs. If they don't get something that is fit for purpose, that has a right level of functionality, then they will not be able to deliver the benefits. And that means a project fails. The supplier, okay, ensures that design and development proposals are realistic. Okay, what we are doing, are we capable of delivering it, etc. All the members of the project board must be decision makers. You don't want people on the project board who cannot make a decision, who cannot commit resources, and of course they must be available. There's no point in having people on the project board if they're always saying we are far too busy to go to these meetings, or I'm away meeting customers and I can't come to these meetings. Then there's no point in having them on the project board. They must be available. Project manager next, okay, defines responsibilities in the team, plans the project, okay, then monitors progress and reports up to the project board, and if there's any problem, initiates corrective action and is responsible for day-to-day management of the project. Just a reminder, if you've got a question, type it up in chat so I can deal with it at the end of the subject that we're dealing with, which is organization. Team manager, as I mentioned, okay, should be coming up, is responsible for the planning of the creation of certain products and manages a team that creates those products. Next up, we have project assurance. We mentioned it earlier. Okay, they are the ones that keep an eye on the project and that it's been run properly. Okay, and it can be split down into business, user, and supplier assurance. Just wait for that slide to come up. Okay, there you've got the slide for project assurance. Again, we should be getting the slide for project support along. Like I mentioned earlier, project support, okay, helps by monitoring how things are going and assist the project manager. They can organize the various reviews of the project. They can maintain logs. Yeah, you've got the issue log, the risk register, etc. They can help to maintain those documents. Configuration management, which I explained was essentially version control. Okay. And obviously that is linked to change control. Once you change something, then the configuration management kicks in. They maintain standards, okay, making sure everything is done to certain rules, and they can be used to support several projects. Yeah, it helps several project managers if you've got these people out there helping them out with the time-consuming administration of the project. Next, we'll be talking very briefly about the change authority. That is defined in the change control approach. Okay, and they are the people permitted to authorize requests for change and of specifications. It could be held at different levels. It could be held all the way up at corporate or program management. It could be held by the project board. It could be delegated to the project manager, or you can have a specific change authority to deal with that. Last slide on organization. Stakeholders. Make sure you understand the definition of a stakeholder, and in PRINCE2 definition, stakeholder is an individual, group, organization that can affect or be affected by or think that they are going to be affected by a project. Okay, all those people are stakeholders. Now, everybody who's working in the project is a stakeholder because they're affected by the project itself. But sometimes you can get people outside of the project that can be affected by it. So, for example, if I want to, my project is to build a new airport. Okay, well, everybody who lives around the airport site is going to be a stakeholder because they're affected by it. So people who live there, farmers, etc., who will find roads being cut and all the works, etc., they're stakeholders. The Civil Aviation Authority is going to be a stakeholder. Yeah. So they're not part of the project, but they're affected by it. So consider doing a stakeholder analysis when designing the team, okay, who's going to be affected, etc., and reflect the outcome in your communications management approach and engage with them. Okay, this is the very minimum you need to do under organization, is to create a communication management approach, having looked at all the stakeholders. Okay, so if you get a question like that, that is the minimum that you need to do under organization. Understand who the stakeholders are and how you're going to communicate with them. Any questions on organization? Let's move on to the business case. Business case is about creating a justification for the project. Okay, and the business case is the most important document in the whole of the project. It's owned by the executive. You cannot change it. Yeah, if it is going to be changed, you obviously got to talk with the executive beforehand. But basically, the most important part of the business case is the benefits. What is it that we are trying to obtain from delivering this project, and what benefit is it going to be for our organization? Just there's the contents of the business case going to come up. It has obviously an executive summary at the beginning. It explains the reasons for doing this project. It then looks at business options. Now, business options, what we need to look at are, at the very minimum, 3 basic options. The first option that we look at is the do nothing option. What happens if we don't do this project? Are there going to be any negative effects on the project? Because if we do the project and it removes the negative effects, that is obviously part of the benefits of the project, eliminating those negative effects. So we need to consider the do nothing option. Then we can look at doing some elements of the project. And then the final option is doing the whole project. You can have several variations of that. Okay. What are the expected benefits? What are the disbenefits of the project? Now, disbenefit is a knock-on effect of doing the project. It's not a cost of the project. That's a separate heading, as you can see there. It's a knock-on effect. Okay. So perhaps you are going to change the machines in your factory. Okay. The cost of actually taking out the machines and putting the new ones in, that's part of the project cost. But actually, there's going to be a disbenefit that for perhaps 2 weeks, whilst you're doing all these changes, there's no production. So the disbenefit of delivering this project is the loss of 2 weeks production. Okay, that's a knock-on effect. It's not a cost of the project, it's a knock-on effect. Okay, timescale, how long will the project take and when do we get the benefits? Very important to understand when we're getting the benefits, because obviously it could result in a bit of a cash flow problem if there's a delay in getting the benefits back. Okay, the costs of creating the project and delivering it. Investment appraisal really looks at the lifetime of the product. How much does it cost to maintain it and then get rid of it? And then lastly, the major risks. Okay, here we have a diagram that's in the manual, and what we need to look at here is a couple of things. Okay, will be coming up shortly on your screens. The first thing we'll look at are the project outputs. That is simply the project's product. What does a project deliver at the end of the project itself that it hands to the user? Okay, and that is the project outputs. Okay, they could have just said project product and it would have been a lot easier, but they've called it a project output. That's what comes out of the project, and it enables us to do something differently. Okay, so let's say we've got a showroom for cars. We're selling lots of cars, and we've decided to change the lighting system, okay, to LED, away from fluorescent lights. So we're going to LED, which are going to be cooler. They're going to use less electricity, and they need less maintenance and changing of fluorescent tubes. So the business change is quite simply, we're going to be using LED lighting. It's as simple as that. Okay, and that obviously is because we're using the project's product. Now, what does that business change create? It creates certain desired outcomes. One of them is we're going to consume less electricity, which means we're going to make a saving. Okay, we're going to have our electricity bills reduced, and we're also going to have our maintenance costs reduced, because we don't need to disrupt and call people in to change the fluorescent tubes, etc., because the LED lights last for quite a long time. Yeah, so those are the desired outcomes: reduced usage of electricity and reduced maintenance costs. Okay, so that is the outcome. Now, when you measure the outcome, you then get benefits. So a measurable reduction, we are going to reduce our electricity bill by 20% and our maintenance costs by 10%. Okay, I've mentioned a percentage. You could actually say £15,000 and £5,000. Okay, but when a desired outcome is measured, it then becomes a benefit. And that is what we need to do when we're doing our business case, is try and estimate how much benefit we're actually going to go. It's no good saying, yeah, we should do this because it's going to be it's going to be a money saver. Well, how much? We need to know how much it is before we venture on this project. Yeah, we need to see if the amount of work we're going to do and the expense and risks we're going to run on the project, is it worth doing for the benefits that we're going to be getting. Okay, and obviously those benefits help our strategic objectives. The business case, next slide, is going to be looking at the business case development. Okay, the business case starts to get developed right at the start of the project in the initiation. Okay, during the startup process. Okay, then we look at it in more detail during the initiation stage. Excuse me. Obviously, working out the detail of benefits and disbenefits, the costs, etc. Yeah, that might take a bit of work. So all that is going to be done in the initiation stage to give us a detailed business case, not a final business case, a detailed business case. At the end of each management stage, we then verify that the business case remains valid. We check everything, we update it, and check that it remains valid. If any benefits have come in, then we will record that. And we'll do that from stage to stage. The final delivery stage, okay, the project is finished, then we will confirm the benefits, because some of these benefits might take years to come in. And we will confirm that using corporate or program management to keep track of those benefits. Any questions then on business case? Okay, James, do you have the manual? The manual has the actual template for the business case. I showed you the headings, and inside the manual in Appendix A, yeah, the second product there is a business case. It will give you the detail of the headings and what should go under those headings. There isn't any particular tool, but if you go and search for PRINCE2 business case, then you'll probably be able to find a template. There's no, you know, that won't be difficult, but you should have you should try and get hold of the manual. Otherwise, just Google PRINCE2 business case and it'll come up with those headings. Just check from your recording and you'll get that.
Hi Mario, it's Gavin here. They also have the Appendix A on the Balance Global platform.
Okay, it's just I haven't seen the document, yeah, but that's where they'll have the all the various formats for it.
Brilliant. If anybody needs manuals sent over, I can get them sent over as a PDF to you. Just let me know.
Okay, moving on. We're going to go on to the next subject, which is risk. Okay, let's just wait for it to come up now. And risk, like I mentioned, is all about uncertainty. Okay, will something happen? And if it does, what are the effects on the project? Is it going to be a negative effect, in which case it's a threat, or will it have a positive effect, i.e. we reduce costs, we reduce the time, we improve the quality. Okay, that will be an opportunity. The important thing to remember is uncertainty. And when you see a question or an answer that has the words may, might, could, possibly, probably, all those words introduce uncertainty. They're not definite. So if it's using those words, I'll go over them again. Might, may, possibly, could, probably. Those are all dealing with risk, not an issue, because an issue is something that has happened. Yeah, if it might or might not happen, it's a risk. So be very careful, both during foundation and practitioner. Yeah, watch out for those words because they mean risk. Anything else is an issue. Okay, I'm going to talk about the risk management procedure, the process. Okay, and what I want you to remember is the mnemonic I ate peaches in China. Okay, I'll say that again. I ate peaches in China. If you remember that phrase, yeah, you'll always remember the 5 elements of the risk management procedure in PRINCE2. Diagram will be coming up in a couple of seconds. And the first thing we'll look at is identify. Identify is the I. Okay, first thing we need to do is identify the context for a project, how important it is, what is actually at risk. Yeah, and depending on what is at risk, then it will create and give you an idea on how strictly you need to manage your risk management. Okay, so identify what is at risk and then identify the different occurrences that could impact on those things that are important to your project. Okay, so 2 steps: context and then identify the individual risks, both threats and opportunities, which you record in your risk register. Okay, the risk register, having a record of that is one of the minimum things that you need to do. Once you understand what the context of the project is, what is at risk, you can then develop a risk management approach, which is also a minimum requirement in a PRINCE2 project. You know how you're going to deal with risks. Once you've identified the individual risks, you then evaluate them, assess them individually by a question of looking at how much impact they're going to have on the project and the amount of risk, and the probability of it occurring. And then you need to sum up using perhaps some financial tool. You can then sum up all your risks and see, you evaluate them and see how risky the whole project is. Because you can have lots of small risks, and if you've got lots of them, then there's quite a good chance that quite a few of them will turn up to be affecting your project. If you only got 1 or 2, then it's more manageable. But you need to assess them all, because you could die, your project could die of 100 little cuts. Okay, so you need to look at them individually and then evaluate them as a whole. Next step is plan responses. Okay, so can you do anything about the major risks? Can you reduce the chances of them happening? Can you eliminate them from happening? Can you reduce the impact if they do happen? You'll need to plan responses for those risks. Some of those responses you'll implement before, and some of them you'll implement once the risk has occurred, once the event has occurred. The last, and that obviously affects the 4th step, which is implement. Okay, so that's the I, the A for et, the P for peaches, the next I for in, and the last letter C China, communicate. Actually, communicate happens all along the 4 other steps. Okay, and what we're doing is we're sending various reports all along, and in your highlight reports, your checkpoint reports, your end stage reports, you're summarizing and looking at all these risks. And importantly, when we have the end of a stage, we will actually sit formally with a project board and review the risks to make sure that it's continuing with this project. Yeah, there's no big risk that can destroy everything we've been working on. So there's a summary of it. We identify, understand the project, what's at risk. Then we populate the risk register with the individual threats and opportunities. Just waiting for the slide to come up. Gavin, which slide are you seeing? Are you still seeing the risk management procedure?
No, I can see cause, event, and effect in front of me at the moment.
Right. Okay, because I'm looking on the other one and it still hasn't changed. It takes quite a while. I'm not sure if that's my problem or everybody's suffering the same problem. Right, there's the identify. You seeing identify now?
Yeah, I can indeed.
Okay, so that changed quickly. Okay, and that's what I mentioned before. Understand the context of the project and what are the objectives that are at risk, and then you create the risk management approach, create the risk register, identify the individual ones, and then populate the risk register. Okay, those are the important aspects. Can you see cause, event, and effect now?
I can indeed.
Okay. Just like with benefits, we looked at project output and outcomes and then benefits. Here we also have to break it down a little bit into cause, event, and effect. Okay, let's say we're planning a open air concert. You know, it could be raining. That doesn't mean that we have to cancel the concert. Okay, we might have to cancel it if we have flooding. So we can't really cancel the rain. You know, we can't stop it raining, but we could take measures to prevent flooding. Okay, because if it does get flooded, then that will mean that we'll have to cancel the objective. So always look at the risks in terms of what causes it, which is sometimes called the risk driver. What causes it? What event does that create? And how does that affect the objective? By breaking it down into 3, it then tells us what it is that we need to prevent. And in this case, what we need to do is take measures to prevent flooding. The assess stages, okay, like I said, estimate each individual risk in terms of probability and impact, and then evaluate them as a cumulative impact of all those risks on the project. You could use a risk matrix to keep track of them. Okay, so we have high impact, high probability risks on one end, high impact, low probability, or low impact, high probability, that's a medium. And then in the bottom left corner, low impact, low probability. So once you've assessed them, as it says there, you're looking at them in terms of probability and impact primarily. Then you can plot them. And the ones on the top right are the ones that are going to be a bit of a problem. Now, depending on whether it's a threat or an opportunity, you might have specific responses for those risks. Throat is going dry. Okay, let's look at some of these individual specific risks responses. under threats, we have avoid. Now, the main thing to think of here is under avoid, you should think of the word eliminate. Okay, because when we try to avoid something, what we're trying to do is eliminate it completely. So in order to avoid flooding, we will hold our concert in an indoor stadium. Okay, there's a roof, so there's no way it's going to get flooded. Okay, so that's one thing. Avoid is eliminate. It will not happen. That risk will not happen because of our response. Another response is reduce. Yeah, we can take measures to reduce the probability. So if we hold the concert in summer instead of early spring, then there's less chance of rain. Depends where you live, obviously, there's less chance of rain in summer. If you do this in the north of Europe, you've got a good chance of rain, but if you do it in the south of Europe, like say Italy or Spain or Portugal, then in July, there's very little chance of rain. Okay, so you're reducing the probability. You haven't eliminated it completely because it could rain, yeah, but you've reduced it. Or you could take measures like increase the flood defenses, improve the drainage. You can take measures now before it happens so that you can reduce the impact. If it does rain, it does start to flood, then it should clear up a lot easier and shouldn't be so much of a problem. Okay, now reduce our activities that you carry out before the risk appears. Okay, next up we have contingency. Okay, and that only reduces the impact. Okay, so you don't do anything ahead of the risk materializing. You only do it when it happens. And that is your plan B. Okay, so you might say, right, if it does get flooded, we'll postpone it for a month, wait for things to get a bit better, and then redo the concert. Okay, transfer looks at reducing the impact only and is usually a financial means, for example, insurance. Okay, so you pay a certain amount of money, and if something happens, then the insurers will take the liability. You could also look at perhaps passing the liability on to, say, the people who buy the tickets, in the sense that we could put something on the ticket that says, if the concert gets cancelled due to bad weather, no refunds will be made available, or only 15% refund will be made. So you're transferring the impact to the people who are buying the ticket. Share means that you will both look at taking some of this impact or benefit, because now these particular risks at the bottom, you can actually also use it for opportunities. So if there's going to be extra sales of tickets, then you can share that with the person who leased you the use of the field, or perhaps with the performers on the music festival. You can say, well, you know, if we get extra people attending, then you'll get a percentage of the extra money we make. You can accept a threat on opportunity. You can say, right, I understand that there's a possible expense here. Then you just say, right, I won't do anything in advance. I will ignore it, and if I have to pay for something, I'll pay for it. It's just not worth my while to do something in advance. So I'm accepting that the risk is there. If it happens, then I'll pay for it, and I'm not going to do anything about it. You can also reject an opportunity. Okay, you know you can make a bit more money by doing a certain activity. Well, we're not going to do it because it's not worth my money, my time and effort for a little bit of extra money. So I reject the opportunity to get a bit more benefit. I didn't mention the two opportunity responses. Exploit. Exploit means there's a chance of something good happening, and you take measures to make sure that it does happen. Whereas avoid means you take measures so it doesn't happen for sure. Exploit means you take measures to make sure that it does happen. So for example, in the open air concert, we're obviously going to sell beer and soft drinks and food, etc. Well, in order to make sure that the people buy the food and beer here, I'm going to introduce checks at the entrance to make sure people do not bring their own drinks and food. Yeah, so I'm making them buy my own food. They're not going to be here for 2 days without eating or drinking, so they'll have to buy my overpriced burgers and hot dogs and beer. Enhance means I'm going to do more of something that is bringing a benefit. So for example, let's say I'm not exploiting the food situation, but I'm looking at the fact that it's going to be very hot over the weekend of the concert. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to order extra beer, because I could, if I had ordered 50,000 cans of beer, now actually, because it's so hot, I think I'll be able to sell double. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the suppliers and get them to bring me extra 100,000 cans of beer, so I can enhance what I'm already doing, i.e. selling soft drinks. Any questions then on risk? Just type them up. Okay, talk about the risk budget. You can have a separate risk budget set aside. It's optional. Okay, it is part of the project budget, but you just use it to pay for the mitigating actions. So I'm going to improve the drainage, then that money comes out of the risk budget. If I'm going to pay for insurance, that money will come out of that risk budget. All the planning and analysis, that we talked about in the different steps of the risk management procedure, all those different bits and pieces, they come out of the project budget. But to actually pay for whatever the response was, will come out of the risk budget. Okay, like I said, any questions, just type them in and I'll deal with them as they come up. Next up, we're going to deal with change. Just like with risk management, it's about identifying and assessing and controlling change. We don't want to stop change in a project. We just need to deal with it appropriately. First thing we need to realize is what are the different types of issue we can have in a project. And these are divided into 3 categories. The first category is request for change. And that means that we've agreed to deliver something. We've agreed to deliver something, and now the customer or the user has changed their minds about one particular aspect, and they're requesting for change. Okay, everything that's been asked for is baselined and is written up in the project product description. If they make a request for a change, it's because of changing the baseline project product description or some other aspect of, say, a specific component, which is covered by a product description. Once those things are written, they're baseline. So request for change is that the customer or the user is trying to change something that has been baselined. Why is this important? Because obviously, who's going to pay for it? This needs to come out of the customer's pocket. They're probably paying for the whole project, but this is additional money, okay? Because they decided to change something. The second type of issue is an off specification. And an off specification is when a supplier has agreed to deliver something for a certain cost and time span, and as he's got to work on it, he's then found out I cannot actually meet the specifications. Okay. So he cannot meet the specifications that have been agreed. He's not asking us to change the specification. He's saying, I just can't meet them. So obviously the supplier, who might be a third party, obviously, we need to find a financial solution to it. So he might have to say, well, fine, don't pay me 100,000 because I haven't met the exact conditions. Would you accept this for 90,000? Okay, so who pays for that? That's the important thing. So a request for change comes from the user. He wants to change something that has been agreed upon and baselined. Off-spec comes from the supplier. He cannot meet the conditions and criteria that he had agreed to deliver for a certain price. Okay. Anything else is a problem of concern. But the first two issues are very important because it depends on who's going to pay for it. This is the PRINCE2 issue and change control procedure. You should remember this as CAPD, C-A-P-D-I, CAPD. Okay, so the first element over here on the left is the capture element. And what we need to do there is, one, determine the type of issue it is. Is it a request for change or an off specification? Because obviously that is going to have a very important effect on deciding how we're going to manage it. We look at the severity and priority of the issue, and then we register it in the issue register. We register it in the issue register or in the daily log. If it's an informal issue, it's a very small one, we might just record it in the daily log, and we don't go through the CAPD process because it's very easy. But if it affects something that has been baselined, it has to go through CAPD. Okay, so we've captured it. We know what type of issue it is, how important it is, etc. We're now going to do an impact assessment. How does the issue affect the project objectives, particularly the business case, particularly the benefits within the business case? Okay, what about the risks? Does it make the risk worse or better? And finally, in this step, we're going to recheck that the severity and priority we had assigned it earlier remains the same. Now that we've looked at it, we might actually see it's not really that big a problem. It might actually be a very small issue, or actually it might be worse. Okay, so that's the final step of assessment. We then identify possible options to resolve this problem. That's really the project manager's job. We evaluate those options and recommend 2, maybe 4 of them, to whoever needs to decide which option we go for. Now, that could be the change authority, or it could have to go up to the project board. If it exceeds the tolerances, then it has to go to the project board. There's no change authority involved here. It goes straight to the project board. Okay, so somebody needs to decide. It needs to be escalated beyond the delegate authority, and a decision is made. Either we approve a certain option, or we reject all the options and ask for new ones to be looked at, or we could defer the options. And what we can do there is simply go off and, how shall I say? We go off and say, we are looking at perhaps waiting for a week, perhaps the situation goes away, and then we can continue from there. Okay. And lastly is, once a decision is made, we then take the corrective action and update the records and plans. Okay, any questions on the change theme? Like I said, type them up in chat, and I'll get to you once I see a question pop up. We move on to quality theme. Okay, basically what we need to look at in the quality theme is not just the costs and time of creating a product, but also checking that it's up, it has reached the right level of quality. So the first steps are here at the top left. We have the customer's quality expectations. What is the level of functionality he wants? And how is he going to accept it? Okay, what tests do I have to run as a supplier in order to know that it has met his quality expectations? We should agree on this because obviously testing and meeting those tests takes time and it costs money at times. Okay, so we need to agree that because that's going to be part of our plan. We also need to agree it so that at the end of the project, when we hand it over, there shouldn't be a problem because he knows exactly and he agreed what tests were going to be done, and he should then be happy with the results. So we agree all this and put it in the project product description, understanding what the project level quality is. We can then create a quality management approach. We then analyze the products, and create the component products, okay, for which we have a product description. So the project product description describes the whole project and the customer quality expectations of it, whilst the product descriptions concern the individual components. So in the example we had before of our smartphone, we could say the smartphone is going to be the successor to the Galaxy S21. It will have all the technology already existing, plus the following 2 or 3 new technologies, and it will be produced at no more than a total cost of $120. Okay, so those are very general quality statements. Here we have the individual statements for each component. So for the camera, the battery, etc., that will be described here. And here we will have the actual quality criteria for each one of them. So the battery needs to be so much wide by so much long and so much thick. It needs to hold enough electricity to power the phone under certain conditions for 72 hours. It will charge up in 2.5 hours from 0 to 100%. Yeah, all that will be set out in the quality criteria. You'll have tolerances given there. What are the ways? We will describe the methods to be used for testing it, the quality methods, and who is responsible for carrying them out. All that will be done for each component. When we get near to creating that particular component, we can then enter the tests with the details in the quality register and then tick them off as they get passed. Okay, so we have our finished product. We then sit down and have our quality review meeting. Yeah, this is part of the quality review technique. And we get the quality and approval records. Okay, so this meeting, really what we're doing is checking that all the tests have been done and there are no issues. And we bring the user into the loop so you can see how things are been developing so that he can indicate that he's happy with what we've got. That gives us our acceptance records. Okay, at the end, when we hand the project over, the project product to the customer, we've got his acceptance. Okay, here on the left, we have the project product description, and on the right, the product description. You can see, obviously, very similar, but in terms of quality, criteria, and tolerances, these are at project level. Whereas here, we have a bit more detail, but these are for the individual components. Otherwise, the first bits are, as you can see, very, very similar. So we can have the quality review technique, and that is where we check that everything has been passed and there are no issues. As it says there, we involve the user so that he can see how it's developing, and if anything has been missed out, then he can point it out there and then, rather than wait till the end of the project. And once a product has been approved, then it is baselined for change control, configuration management. We have a configuration item record that tells us what version of the battery or camera it is. Any change obviously has to go through CAPTI. There's the review technique. Obviously, we've got the product description, we create it, prepare for the meeting, we meet. It could be sent back to be reworked because it wasn't good enough. There were some serious flaws with it, and then we'll have to do it again. It could, the supplier could say, well, I've got a problem, I haven't been able to meet the agreed specification, so I'm in enough specification, and obviously that kicks off CAPTI. Or we could be perfectly happy with it, in which case we sign it off and baseline it, or we can give a concession, which means there's a small issue with it, we can accept it as it is, okay, even though it's got a small issue, but we're not going to bother. So you can then accept it and it becomes baseline. Okay, so that was a very quick run through through quality. We're going to look at plans. Okay, the plans theme and then the progress themes. And we've got a question as a project manager: what are the high risk and expectations do you need to think of at all times from your experience? The main thing really is people not doing what they're meant to be told. That is the main thing that is common to just about every project I've been involved in. The organization not actually doing what they're meant to be doing when they're supposed to be doing, and the right people not being involved. That is the main thing. 85 to 90% of project problems are as a result of people not doing what they're meant to be doing and the organization. It's as simple and as uncomplicated as that. You can give as many project management tools, software, etc. If they don't do their bit when they're meant to be doing it, then the whole thing falls apart. Yeah, people know, and sometimes people just don't know what it is that they're meant to be doing. Okay, now PRINCE2 nails it down. You've got Appendix C, and it tells you what everybody should be doing. Yeah, it's there in the roles and in Appendix C for every single member of the team in quite a bit of detail. So that is the main issue that you'll come across. Okay, the plans theme tells us when the project's targets are being achieved, it acts as a way of communicating to all members of the team so they know what they're supposed to be doing at what particular time, what activities take place, what resources are being used. Okay. The project plan is a top level of planning we have within the project management team. You can have a corporate or a program plan, but that is outside the project management team. So the project plan tells us when the major products and activities are going to be happening, what are the resources going to be consumed. It gives the business case a total for costs and timescales, identifies where we're going to have the major control points. Okay, and it's produced in the initiation process and updated at every stage boundary as we go along. Stage plan used by the project manager for day-to-day. Yeah, and it's produced in the managing stage boundary immediately before that stage occurs. Okay, so it uses the knowledge of previous stages. Okay, so that's our learning from experience. Team plan is optional. The other two plans are mandatory. And it all depends what the team is doing. Maybe they don't need a plan for the type of work that they're doing. Maybe they do need one, which might be more detailed, but a shorter timescale than the others. Exception plan is simply a project plan or stage plan that replaces a project plan or stage plan that was exceeding its tolerances. Once it's approved, it then carries on from the previous stage till the end of the previous stage. Okay, if the exception is at project level, then it needs to be approved by corporate or program management. If it's at stage level, it's approved by the project board. Now we look at how we break down planning in PRINCE2. Okay, and we have 6 key steps. One of them is designing the plan, knowing how we're going to tailor it, how many stages we're going to have, and how we're going to document it. That is about designing the plan, just understanding how you're going to articulate it. Next step that we need to carry out is define and analyze the products. In the initiation, in the startup phase, we created the project product description, and that defines the project product. We then need to break it down and create what's known as a product breakdown structure. We need to break it down into its components and analyze them. Okay, that then allows us to identify what are the activities that need to be carried out to create each product, component product. Are there any dependencies? Do we have to create a certain product before the other one? Do we have to wait until a certain stage to develop these products, knowing what has happened with the previous products? For example, one of the products for our smartphone is the instruction manual. We can't write it until virtually the whole of the telephone has been developed, because you can't write the manual for something that doesn't exist. Yeah, once you've got it and you know exactly where the buttons are, etc., then you can write the instruction manual. So the dependency, there's quite a few things that is going to be dependent on happening before we get to write the manual. We can prepare the estimates for time and cost for each of the products, then add them up together. Okay, that will obviously inform the project business case. We then prepare a schedule, which is probably going to be a Gantt chart, okay, showing you what happens when and where, okay, which are the first products that need to be created. And then we document it all in accordance with the original design. Okay, we need to use either write it down or have some kind of software that will document all the detail of the project, not just a timeline, okay, but who is involved, what point of time, all the tolerances, etc. All that needs to be documented up. As you're doing all these things, you're also analyzing risks, yeah, and capturing them in your risk register. So this is the PRINCE2 approach to plans. Let's look at some aspects of it in a little bit more detail. This gives us product-based planning, okay? So we write the project product description that defines the project product. We then create a hierarchy of the components. We create a product breakdown structure. We can then write the product descriptions. Yeah, as we've identified the dependencies, we then create a product flow diagram, which shows us the order in which they are developed. This is not a Gantt chart, okay? This actually can be used as a rough Gantt chart, yeah, and is an easy way to go in planning to developing your Gantt chart using a product flow diagram. Let me show you a couple of examples. Okay, here's a product breakdown structure. We're organizing a conference. One of the groups of products is a venue. We need to assess the venue requirements, the venues for the candidates. Yeah, we need to carry out assessments. We need to select one and book it, etc. All those products are part of one group. Here we have another product group, publicity. We need to send bulk emails to invite everyone. We need to have press releases. Okay, so that creates another group. Okay, so create the product breakdown structure so that we understand all the work that needs to be done. Okay, once we've created a product breakdown structure, we can move to the product flow diagram. And here we can see, one of the first decisions that needs to be made is someone needs to agree on what date we're going to have this conference. Another early decision is what is the selected topic for the conference. And we're going to discuss one particular specialist area. Knowing these facts, we can then go off and start working and look at the venue requirements, because we only want to look at the venues that are going to be available for that date. Okay, there's no point looking at venues which are going to be in other dates when actually all we need is to know which ones are available for these dates. Okay, so obviously there's a dependency. All these things need to depend on an agreed date. Okay, here we have another product, which is the selected subject matter. It's in a circle because it comes from outside the project. The project team gets told what the subject matter is. Once they're told this and they know what the agreed date is, we can then look at speakers. Who's going to come and speak on this particular topic? Obviously, we need to know people who are experts on this matter, but are also available. Yeah, no point trying to book someone who's not going to be available for your conference, or who doesn't know anything about the subject. Yeah, or is not an expert on it. Then you don't want, people are not going to come and listen to somebody who's not an expert. Then obviously other products get created, etc. But you can see that if we organize things in this sequence of how things need to happen, it's then very easy to translate this into a Gantt chart. A lot of people struggle with Gantt charts because as they're creating it, they then realize, oh, I've got to put this and this needs to come here. So I've got to move all this to the right and all this to the left. Okay, if you've sorted out your product breakdown structure and organize it into a flow diagram, depending on the dependencies, then this will actually help you get to your Gantt chart a lot easier and without missing important stuff. Okay, so that was plans. Any quick questions on plans?
No. Bored me.
Sorry? Okay, if you've got a question, just type it in. Let's move on to progress. Progress is really about checking how you're actually doing against a plan. Okay, so one of the ways of checking is by having stages. Okay, and the project manager runs the stage by on behalf of the project board, and runs it on a day-to-day basis. Okay, and each stage then allows us to break down the work, learn from lessons, and we involve the project board at the end of the stage to make sure that they agree that there is a continued business justification. That's the importance of this control. Okay, it's actually allowing the project board, who's responsible for the project, to get involved. And we check for continued business justification. Tolerances is the other major control. Like I said, we add tolerances to the project in order for the level of management below us to come back and come back to us if they've got a problem. So here we see corporate program management at the top. They set project level tolerances. So if the project is going to go outside of its tolerances, the project board has to report to corporate for a decision. Project board authorizes stage tolerances to the project manager. If the project manager sees that his stage is going to go out of the tolerances, then he goes up to the project board for a decision using the CAPT process. Project manager delegates work package tolerances to the team manager. Now, the team manager does not raise exception reports, he raises an issue to the project manager. Project manager sometimes, because he's managing 4 or 5 or maybe more different work packages in a stage, he can sometimes say, well, we've had 2 or 3 stages pass already, we've got some spare cash or some spare labor, I will now use them to help you out so that your work package comes back within the tolerances. If it doesn't, if he can't solve it within the stage, then he reports an exception report to the project board. Tolerances, you'll find them in different locations. For time, cost, and scope, you'll find them in the project stage plans and the work packages. Risk, you'll also find it mentioned in the risk management approach. Quality will be defined in the project product description and product description. And the tolerances for benefits, you'll find them in the business case. Okay, so that's where you'll find reference to tolerances for the 6 different criteria. Another set of controls are event and time-driven controls.
Mm-hmm.
So when an event occurs, okay, when you get to the end of the stage or when you have an exception situation, that is the event that triggers off a particular control, which is a report, or it could be time-driven. There are only 2 time-driven controls, and those are highlight reports and checkpoint reports. Those will occur at a certain date. You could say to the project board, tell the project manager, you are to send a weekly checkpoint report. So every week he sends a report up to the project board, okay? Whether something has happened or not, he sends it up. The work package, the team manager sends it the project manager sends a highlight report. The team manager sends a checkpoint report on a basis that the project manager dictates up to the project manager. So everything else happens when it happens. Only these 2 happen on a certain schedule. We can review progress and lessons through all the various registers and logs. And we can keep informing people in the project management team using our various reports. Okay, you can see there, there's 4 of them. And who sends it to who. And we talked about exceptions. Work package, team manager raises an issue. Project manager tries to deal with it. If he can't deal with it, then he might have to raise an exception report up to the project board. Okay, project board will then decide what action. And if they decide something needs to be done, then they'll ask him for an exception plan. They'll review it, approve it, and the project manager can then crack on. At project level, it then gets referred up to corporate. Okay, so that completes the 7 processes. Sorry about the delay we've encountered, but we're ready to move on to processes now. Okay, if you've got a question on the themes, then just type it in and I'll try and deal with it when it comes up. Okay, so let's look at the PRINCE2 processes. The 7 of them are here. The first process is the starting up a project process, which we have just here. Okay, you get a project mandate given to you. Okay, and then you do the minimum amount of work necessary in order to make sure that at least it's worth doing the initiation. Okay, so at the end of the starting up a project process, you end up with the project brief and the plan for the initiation stage. Okay, and remember the project brief contains the outline business case and the project product description. Okay, so if you've done that work, okay, what we're doing is doing a quick check that it's actually worth doing the detailed work here in the initiation stage, because that can take time and money to do. Excuse me. So with the project brief, we can then go and ask for authority to initiate the project. This activity is the first activity of directing a project process. Okay. So we go to them with a project brief. We have the outline business case, project product description, and the plan for the initiation stage. If they're happy with that and they feel it's worth doing the detailed work here, they will authorize the initiation. We'll do the initiating of the project, which means creating all the various documents, doing all the planning, creating the project plan, developing the detailed business case, all the various management approaches, and all of those things put together give us the project initiation documentation. Okay, so we can go up again to the directing a project process and ask them for permission to start the project and start creating the component products. Okay, so we get permission to authorize a project. We've also planned the first delivery stage, so they'll approve the plan for the first delivery stage. Once that is approved, okay, we then start controlling a stage. Okay, and the first thing we do in controlling a stage is we delegate the work packages in managing product delivery. Okay, we delegate it to the team managers, we then start creating all the various components. Okay. As we have delegated it, we can now monitor the progress and, if necessary, take controlling action. So you can see that, remember that definition of what a project management is. The planning, we've done all in this area. We're now delegating the work, we're monitoring it, and we take controlling action in this area. So various actions that we can take during controlling a stage. We can ask for advice from the project board, and they'll give us ad hoc direction. Yeah, we're sending highlight reports. We might send an exception report if we're looking at exceeding the tolerances. They will take a decision and then authorize either the next stage or the exception plan, depending on the situation. And we will do this activity for however many number of exceptions or stages we have. Okay. Now, when we get to the last delivery stage, we will also start, instead of managing stage boundary, which we have here, and that really we should put it down here because it happens at the end of controlling a stage. In the last delivery stage, as we're not going to another stage, we start looking at closing a project. Yeah, we've got to write up the end project report, follow-on action recommendations, lessons report. Yeah, and we write a notification. Write a notification, and then get the project board to authorize project closure. Okay, so that is more or less the flow of the 7 processes. Here you can see the 5 activities of the directing of projects. Yeah, the activities in blue, you've got the guide here, they only happen once during the project. In orange, it can happen at any point and however many number of times of the project. So whilst it's shown here, you know, the project manager during the startup and initiating a project is actually asking for a lot of advice from the executive and members of the project board. In green, that happens for every stage. In red, for every work package. Okay, and in white, whenever we get an exception situation. Any quick questions? Any quick questions on the processes? Think about them and write in the chat if you've got a question. Let's look, as you're doing that, let's look at the processes in a sequence. And I hope that this makes a bit more sense than the previous one. The advantage of the previous one was that we looked at some of the products created and where they happen. So very similar in that the colors are the same. Blue for once during the project, green for during a stage, orange many times, and red once per work package. So if we start up here, we have the project mandate. It triggers the project. So we have the startup phase here. Okay, and there we've got the project board involved with the project manager. At the end of it, we can then go with a project brief up to the directing a project level, ask the project board for permission to initiate the process. So we're going with a project brief and a plan for the initiation stage. Yeah, we then come back down and we start all the detailed planning for the project. We will be consulting with them regularly. If it's a very complex initiation process, then we might use controlling a stage as well to manage it. Towards the end of the initiation process, yeah, we come to managing stage boundary. Okay, over here. So the project manager is involved in both initiation and managing stage boundary. In managing a stage boundary, what the project manager is doing is getting ready to go up to the project board and tell them, here's the updated business case. Do you think there is a justification for carrying on with the project? Here is a plan for the next stage. Do you agree with this plan for the next stage? If they agree to both things, then the project manager has the next stage authorized and he can continue with the project. So he comes down this way, okay, and he starts controlling a stage because this is the first delivery stage. Starts controlling a stage. He can send reports up according to the schedule, can ask for advice. Yeah, he's delegating work packages. We see all the little red work packages to the team managers in the managing product. Towards the end, again, he comes to managing a stage boundary. Yeah, and he prepares to go up to the project board. Here's a business case. Does it remain valid? Are you happy with it? Here's a plan for the next stage. Are you happy with it? If they are, then again, it comes down, yeah, and starts delivering the next delivery stage, controlling a stage, work packages issued, managing stage boundary. Then he comes to the next stage, up and then down, controlling a stage, and towards the end, because it's the last delivery stage, he then starts managing closing a project. Okay, starts signing everything up, getting all the bills sorted, etc., getting ready to hand over the project product to the user. And once everything is done, he can then report to the project board and say, right, everything's done. Here's all the acceptance certificates, blah, blah, blah. Everything's been tidied up. And if the project board is happy that everything has been done, they've got the end project report, follow-on action recommendations, etc., then they can authorize the project to be closed. So that, in a nutshell, is the 7 processes, showing it as a sequence. I know the manual explains it in a particular manner, but sometimes seeing them, all the 7 processes as they actually happen in a sequence, is quite useful in understanding how a project runs. Okay, so I hope that is useful. Any questions, like I said, type them in and I'll attempt to answer them. Okay, but I'm sure you all want to talk about the exam itself, right? There's the exam, 60 questions. You've got to get 55% to pass. So that means you got to get at least 33 of them right. There are now 3 types, sorry, this should have been updated. There are now 3 types of question: simple, multiple choice, combinations, and missing word questions. Okay, you'll get 5 of combination, 5 of missing word, and the remaining 50 simple, multiple choice. Exam techniques that I recommend is read the question carefully so you understand what is happening and what it is that they're asking you to look at. Okay, are they talking about tailoring? Are they talking about minimum requirements? Yeah, make sure you understand what the question is about. Question would probably be something to do with a process or a particular theme. It's important to identify what it is actually about, because some of the possible answers will have nothing to do with that particular theme. Okay, so if it's a question about planning and then it goes on to talk about how you assess a risk, then obviously that's got nothing to do with planning. So that answer is what I define as an unrelated answer. Okay, sometimes you can work out what the right answer is by elimination. Yeah, you will see that some answers have nothing to do with the subject of the question. So that will, hopefully you'll see 3 of them, and that will leave you with the right answer. So sometimes it's easier to work backwards from the answers to get to the right answer. Okay. Obscure, difficult questions, skip them and move on to the next one. You've got 60 minutes to do 60 questions, so you haven't got a lot of time. Yeah, if you're not too sure about what they're going on about, skip it, move on to the next one. And then at the end of the exam, come back, have a go at it. If you don't know what the answer is, then just tick any box. You've got a 25% chance of getting it right anyway. But don't waste time trying to sort out a very obscure or difficult question. Obviously, use common sense, but one of the things we found out is that if you're going to change an answer, yeah, remember that usually your first gut answer was a right one. Okay, sometimes people go back and look at a question and they look at it and confuse themselves. They overthink it and then come up with the wrong answer. If you're going to change an answer, make sure it is because you've seen something specific. Okay, Richard, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. Flag a question you want to come back to. If you want me to go back to something we've already covered, just type it in and we'll go back to it at the end of this session. Okay, the first type of question is a simple multiple choice. Yeah, and it's very simple and straightforward. Which statement about the continued business justification principle is correct? So there'll be one correct answer in there. Okay, so if we look at this one, you know, oh, you mean in the exam? Well, yeah, you can just make a note of it on a piece of paper. Yeah, you're doing it electronically, I assume. So just make a note of it and you can go back, but you can actually go back and see which are the ones that you've yet to put an answer in for. You can scroll back up. Okay, hope that answers it. Let's look at the possible answers on this one. Justification for compulsory projects does not need approval. Well, obviously, one of the things is that we need an agreed business case, so it needs to be authorized and approved. There must be no change to the reasons for a project. Well, things can change. Yeah, and that's why we have a change management procedure. A formal business case document is mandatory. Okay, now this one is tricky because a business case is mandatory, but a formal document is not. Yeah, there's nothing that tells you that you have to actually write a formal document out. It all depends on what your project is and the circumstances in your organization as to how you're going to write it out. Okay, so this question, yeah, a formal document is mandatory. It's not. A business case is, but it doesn't have to be a formal document. It could be done in various other types depending on your organization. And the correct answer is D. The chosen option must provide value for money. Okay, we don't want to spend too much. This is the second type of question, okay? And this is the combination. Basically, what happens here is that you have to, in effect, answer two questions. Yeah, you have to get two answers right to get the right answer. Okay, so you'll have 4 statements and 2 of them will be right. And you have to select A, B, C, or D, depending on which are the 2 right ones. So here we have which statements apply to a stage plan. It is produced for the project during the initiating a project process. Well, actually, the plan that is created in initiating a project is the project plan, not the stage plan. Stage plan is done in managing stage boundaries. So automatically now, yeah, if you're certain of that, you know that answer 1 is wrong. So that means that A and D are wrong. The next possible answer, the next statement is, it is produced close to the time where the planned events will take place. Now that is true. Okay, it's done in the managing stage boundary immediately before the stage begins. Okay, so 2 is correct. So if we look at the possible correct answers, we eliminated statement 1, which means A and D have been eliminated. Now 2 is only available in B, so the answer has to be B. Okay. Look at the next possible option. It says it provides a basis for day-to-day control by the project manager. That is correct. Okay, so 2 and 3 are correct, which again shows me that it's B. Question 4, statement 4, it provides a basis for control by the project board. No, the project board uses the project plan. So that 1 and 4, you can see, are wrong. So the correct answer then is B, because 2 and 3 are correct. And B is the one that mentions 2 and 3. So that is the combination type question. You'll get 5 of these in your exam. Then third and final type of question you'll get are the missing word or missing words. Yeah, it might be 2 or 3 words. Yeah. So in this example, we have, it will state it, identify the missing word or words in the following sentence. The purpose of the something process is to establish solid foundations for the project. Okay. The answer to that is initiating a project. That is where you do all the analysis and all the detailed planning, and that provides the solid foundations for the project, and it's all written up into the PID. Okay, managing stage boundary is about going from one stage to stage. Directing a project is about authorizing things, yeah, not actually doing any real work, because a project board really doesn't produce anything. All they do is authorize the work of the project manager. Managing product delivery, that's about work packages. So it's got nothing to do about the whole project. It's about one particular component. So you can see that I can eliminate fairly easily 3 wrong possible answers. Okay, so that leaves you with A, which is initiating a project, which is exactly what the answer should be. So the answer is A. The purpose of the initiating a project process is to establish solid foundations for the project. Okay, just look at some of the typical exam questions. Yeah, this one we're looking at the minimum requirements, which is part of tailoring. Which is a minimum requirement for applying the organization theme? Okay, yeah. Says define project assurance. Is that really that important? Project assurance, it is important, but there must be something more wider, more sweeping. Yeah, combined roles were possible to simplify the organization. We don't need to simplify it if we don't have to. Yeah, that's not a key aspect. To appoint a business change manager as senior user when the project is part of a program. We haven't talked about programs at all. Yeah, this would perhaps be in program management, but not in project management. To define the approach to engaging with stakeholders. Yeah, this becomes your communication management approach. So that is, the answer is D. Okay, but look at these minimum requirements. You should make a note of what are the minimum requirements, because you will get 3 or 4 questions on this for sure in your exam. Which statement about the continued business justification principle is correct? The justification for compulsory projects does not need approval. I mean, we all know how important the business justification is, so you can say, well, that's going to be nonsense. Yeah, I think we've done this question. I might have gone back, sorry. What must be produced as a minimum requirement for applying the plans theme? Okay. Look at this possible answer. B, a record of the issues that are being formally managed during a plan. Well, you don't manage issues during a plan. Issues, you just deal with them as they come up. You cannot plan for an issue. So this really, dealing with issues, is about change theme. Okay, it's not the plans theme. A diagram showing the sequence of production of the planned products. Okay, that is a reasonable guess. A record of the major risks relating to the project plan. That will be documented under risks, yeah, in the risk register. So this wouldn't be the minimum thing. This would be the minimum thing under the risk theme, but not under the plans theme. Okay, so the most important thing to do about plans and the focus on planning is that we need to understand what the work is. Okay, and the answer to that is A. Okay, Richard, what was the last question? This one? The chosen option must provide value for money. Yeah, everything we do must be value for money. And that really is the executive's role. Yeah, we need to deliver value for money for the business. Yeah, we don't just give the user everything he wants. It has to be value for money. It's going to make an appropriate amount of benefits for the cost we're going to entail. How is a learn from experience principle applied? by reviewing the management of previous projects, by defining the customer's expectations. Okay, what does defining the customer's expectations talk about really? It's talking about products, the expectations of the product, the quality expectations. Yeah, so it's not really about the principle of learn from experience. By defining cost tolerances are a part of progress. Tolerances, part of progress. By delegating responsibilities to a different level of management. That can happen when the project board can delegate change authority to the project manager or to project assurance. Yeah, but that is about progress. So you can see that none of these three have anything to do with learning from experience. So that leaves us with reviewing the management of previous projects so that we can learn lessons from that. So that's the answer, A. Which is a reason why the defined roles and responsibilities principle must be applied. Okay. Because each project will have unique outputs. That's nothing to do with roles and responsibilities. You know, every project delivers something unique. Okay. Because more than one function may be involved in the project. Okay, one functional area of the organization. Remember, a project, one of the 5 characteristics of it is it's cross-functional. Different people from different areas of the organization will be involved. So obviously we need to have very clear to understand who is a boss and who is in support of the project. We need to have very clear defined roles and responsibilities. So the answer for that one is going to be B. Yeah, it has nothing to do with projects having duplicated or inconsistent objectives, and it's nothing to do with because stages provide senior management with control points. Yeah, this is talking about the actual process. Okay, so the answer to that one is going to be B. Which principle is being applied when a project product description is produced? Okay, you can see that some of the questions, and all these questions, I've drawn them out from one exam. Okay, you can see that this one is quite similar to one we've had just a couple of questions back. Okay, so does it have, writing a project product description, does it give us anything to do with a business case or progress? No. Does it teach us something from somebody else's experience? No. Has it got anything to do with stages? No, because that's progress. It's actually about focusing on the product, writing out what a project product description is, and from there we can then do all our planning. So that is the focus on products. Okay? That's why we look at what it is that we actually want to produce, and we define that in the project product description. Which is a minimum requirement for applying the risk theme? A risk breakdown structure must be created. A risk budget must be established for managing risks. Well, you can have a risk budget, but remember I said it's optional, not must. Must means that you have to do it. I said it was optional. Identified threats and opportunities must be documented. Okay. Risk checklists must be used to ensure risks are identified. How you actually assess and identify your risks is entirely up to you guys. Yeah, it all depends how complex your project is. You can have a workshop, you can hire a risk management expert, yeah, have a brainstorming session. There's nothing to say that you have to use a checklist. Okay, A risk breakdown structure must be created. Actually, I didn't tackle this answer before, but there is no such thing as a risk breakdown structure. There is a product breakdown structure, but not a risk breakdown structure. So A is obviously wrong. That leaves us with C. Identified threats and opportunities must be documented. We have to keep track of the various risks and opportunities. So we must document them so that we can assess them, evaluate them, and plan for them. So we have to keep a record of them. That is a minimum requirement. There are other minimum requirements. This is one of them. Okay, so you can see that sometimes you can look at the answer and say, this has got nothing to do, or that thing doesn't exist. Okay, they can be very sneaky by introducing something that sounds like something you might have already covered in the course and the material. A risk breakdown structure. There is no such thing. Okay, so there's different approaches to arriving at the right conclusion. One of them is obviously going straight for the right answer, but sometimes it's easier to work back by eliminating what are clearly the wrong answers. Okay, so bear that in mind. And remember, obviously, the answers should really be related to the question. And sometimes you can eliminate them like that. Okay, so your exam is going to be 1 hour. Okay, and it should not be too difficult. Okay, I say that, but obviously it all depends on how much you guys put into your study. Personally, in over 11 years of teaching PRINCE2, I've only had 2 students ever fail a foundation exam. With a bit of common sense and a bit of calm thoughtfulness, you should be able to tackle the exam and get at least 55% or more. It is not a difficult exam. Okay, just a bit of studying and a bit of common sense, on how you look at the questions. And I've taught you a little bit of how you need to look at the questions. You can either look at it by arriving at the right answer straight away, if you're that good, or by working backwards and eliminating the wrong answers, leaving you with the right answer. And sometimes that can be simply by relating the fact that only one of the answers actually is about the subject the question is. Okay, so think of it that way, and it really, really helps people to get through their exams. It is not a very difficult exam. I won't say it's easy, but it's not a very difficult exam, and the pass rates are generally fairly good. Like I said, I've got a pass rate of about 98, 99%. Only 2 people in several hundred have failed my exams after my training. The practitioner exam is a completely different beast. It's much more difficult, much more complex. But that obviously there is a different masterclass for that, which we also deliver through Learning People. And that really brings us to the end of our session today. You'll be getting a copy of the recording, and I'll wait, Gavin, if it's okay with you. I don't mind hanging on for an extra 5-10 minutes if somebody has a quick question.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine with me.
Okay, so I hope that was useful. Very quickly, if you've got a query on anything related to PRINCE2, Gavin, I can send you a copy.
Brilliant. Yeah, I will send you over an email, Mario. Actually, you have my email address, so you can send the copy over to me if you like.
Yeah.
Brilliant. If any of the guys, if you have any questions about booking your exam, if you just email our student care email address that I sent, I'll throw it in the chat there again. So any questions to do with booking your exams?
There's a question on practitioner. I'm not sure. I know I've got the practitioner books, but how they actually book themselves onto it, I'm not familiar with your own process there.
For this, if you could say that again, the books, was it?
There's a question about when the practitioner masterclass will be available. I'm not sure how you actually promulgate that.
Okay. I don't have the schedule myself, but the guys will be notified by email.
I've got 3 lessons to do in September. One of them at least will be a practitioner, but obviously you have to go through learning people to get the dates and book yourselves on it. But I thoroughly recommend it because the exam is so different to what you've done before. I think someone's still typing.
Michelle, you have a question, is that right? That was just a direct message there.
Yeah, Dionisio. It's different in the fact that it's not about recalling facts so much. In the practitioner exam, you actually have to use the manual. Okay, there are provisions for using an electronic version of the manual, and it's really about looking at a scenario, being given certain information in the scenario, and then arriving at the right decision, applying PRINCE2 to that particular scenario. So it's showing that you understand PRINCE2 and how to apply it in a real life situation. Okay, and obviously the practitioner will be doing what we do in that masterclass is we have a very quick revision of the material, but actually focus on what kind of questions you're going to get on that particular subject in the exam, and also teaching you certain specialist exam techniques that help you understand the scenario, draw a little plan for the project that you've been given in the scenario, and then how to tackle the questions in there. So it's quite specialist preparation that I give based on years of experience teaching it. I must say I have a very high pass rate at practitioner, not 99%, but it's almost 89%, which the average is between 67 and 75, but I'm sort of like fairly high pass rate because of this investment in tackling the exam. So I highly recommend that session.
Michelle just had a question there, Mario. It was just sent directly to me, so I'm just going to pop it on the chat there.
Okay.
That's from Michelle.
Yeah. The thing you need to focus on is there are 4 elements in PRINCE2. Like you said, there are 7 principles, 7 themes, and 7 processes. Those are 3 of the 4 elements of PRINCE2. The 4th element, okay, is tailoring. And there are a lot of questions, like I mentioned, and I gave you examples. There are a lot of questions on tailoring by asking you, what is the minimum that you need to do for this particular process? Or sorry, for this particular theme? What are the minimum activities or products that you have to create? Like, for example, we had one on risk just now. Yeah, what is the absolute minimum? And that was to document all the risk, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so in terms of tailoring, there is more emphasis in the 2017 version of PRINCE2 on tailoring. Before there was no questions on tailoring. Now we are getting more of it so that people know how to apply tailoring to a particular project. They're testing that much more nowadays, and they're also testing the principles much more. So you need to know how principles support the themes and the themes support the principles, but you also need to know what are the minimum requirements in terms of activities and products for each particular theme. Okay, so focus on that. You'll get 3 to 5 questions on those minimum requirements, which actually reflects tailoring. Yeah, because like I told you, you don't use a whole manual if you don't have to. You can cut it down, but there are certain minimums that you need to keep. Okay, so focus on that, because you get, like I said, 3 to 5 questions for sure. Aid, I think you need to get out a bit more. But thanks for the compliments. Any more questions? You're welcome, Michelle. Right. Gavin, I think we can call it a night. Sorry for the delay. There was a bit of confusion about the link initially, but I hope we've made up for it. And all that's left for me is to wish you adieu and very good luck in your foundation exam. And hopefully we'll see you in the future for a practitioner masterclass.
And thanks so much, Mario. That was a great class.
Okay, I'll send you the links, a copy of the slides later.
Brilliant. I appreciate that. And again, guys, apologies for the delay there when we first started. As I was saying, just send us over an email if you do have any questions about booking your exams. And like that, if you want the recording of this, also just send us an email. That's everything from me. Brilliant. Cheers, guys. I appreciate it tonight.